Hi guys, most men are fighting a battle they've already won. They spend their lives chasing validation while completely missing the signs that they already actually hold the power. If you don't recognize your own value, the world will treat you like you don't have any. But by the end of this video, you'll know exactly where you stand and how to own that position. Today, I want to talk to you not just about attraction, but about awareness, about the quiet signals that reveal who you are in a room, often before you even speak. Because the truth is, many of you watching this right now have already crossed a threshold in your life. You've built experience, resilience, emotional depth, and yet, something inside you still questions your value. And I want you to pause for a moment and really sit with that. Have you ever walked into a room and felt a shift, but then immediately doubted it? Have you ever caught someone looking at you, only to convince yourself it meant nothing? Have you ever been treated with a certain level of respect or curiosity, and instead of receiving it, you downplayed it? If that sounds familiar, then this conversation is deeply personal for you, because what we're really talking about here is not attraction alone, it's self-perception. And self-perception quietly shapes every interaction you have. You see, human beings are constantly reading each other, not just through words, but through posture, eye contact, energy, timing, presence. This is deeply rooted in psychology. There's a concept known as the halo effect, where people unconsciously assign positive traits to someone based on a single strong impression. And what's fascinating is, this isn't something you turn on or off. It's something you either embody or you dilute. So when you don't recognize your own value, you unintentionally teach others to overlook it too. Not because it isn't there, but because you're not holding it. Let's begin with something very subtle, yet incredibly powerful. The first sign: people stop talking when you walk into a room. Now, most people misunderstand silence. They think silence is awkward. They rush to fill it. They start speaking too quickly, laughing too loudly, over-explaining themselves, all because they feel uncomfortable being seen without distraction. But when a man carries presence, real presence, something very different happens. The room adjusts. And I want you to imagine this for a moment. You walk into a space. Maybe it's a gathering. Maybe it's a cafe. Maybe it's a social event. Conversations are flowing. Energy is scattered. And then you enter. And for just a second, things slow down. Someone glances. Another person pauses mid-sentence. There's a shift you can't quite explain. That is not awkwardness. That is awareness. People are not pulling away from you. They are orienting themselves around you. They are subconsciously asking, who is this person? What do they bring into this space? How should I respond? And here is where many men lose their power. The moment they feel that shift, they panic. They interpret it as pressure, and then they try to earn their place in a space they've already been acknowledged in. They start talking too much. They over-smile. They try to prove they belong. But the truth is, you already did. Holding silence is a form of confidence that very few people master. It communicates without a single word that you are comfortable with yourself, that you are not here to chase approval, that your presence is not something you negotiate, it's something you bring. I once worked with a client in his early 60s, a quiet man, not flashy, not loud, but everywhere he went, people paid attention. And when I asked him what he consciously did in social settings, he said something very simple. He said, "I don't rush to speak. I let people come to me." That one shift changed everything. So if you've ever noticed that slight pause when you enter a room, don't rush to break it. Let it exist. Let people feel you before they hear you, because that is where real influence begins. Now, let's move into something even more intimate. Eye contact. The second sign is when women hold eye contact with you, and then quickly look away. This is one of the most misunderstood signals, especially for men who tend to overthink social interactions, because on the surface, it seems small, almost insignificant. But psychologically, it's incredibly revealing. Eye contact is one of the most vulnerable forms of nonverbal communication. It exposes attention, it reveals curiosity, and in many cases, it carries a subtle form of attraction. So when a woman looks at you, holds it just a second longer than usual, and then looks away quickly, What's actually happening is not rejection. It's awareness of being seen. There's a moment in that interaction where she realizes, I've been looking at him. And that realization creates a slight emotional reaction. Curiosity, nervousness, intrigue. But here's where your response becomes everything. If you immediately look away, if you drop your gaze, if you act as though you weren't worthy, you break the connection before it even begins. Now I want you to think about the difference in energy when someone holds eye contact calmly, not aggressively, not forcefully, just present. There's a grounded confidence in that. It says, I see you, and I'm comfortable being seen, and that kind of energy is incredibly disarming. I remember observing this in a coffee shop. 2 people. No conversation, just occasional glances. But the difference was in how one person responded. One would look away instantly, almost apologetically. The other would hold the gaze for a moment, with a slight, knowing expression, and then return to what they were doing. And you could feel the shift. One energy asked for permission, the other assumed it. This doesn't mean you stare, it doesn't mean you try to dominate, it simply means you don't run from it. Because attraction is often not about what you say, it's about what you're able to hold. And that brings us to something deeper, something that goes beyond physical appearance. The third sign is when people don't just compliment how you look, they comment on your presence, your energy. Now this is where attraction becomes layered, because anyone can notice surface-level traits. Appearance, clothing, style, those are immediate. But when someone says, there's something different about you, or I feel comfortable around you, they're not reacting to what they see. They're reacting to how you make them feel. And that is a far more powerful form of attraction. What's happening psychologically is that your internal state, your level of calm, your emotional stability, is being communicated without effort. Especially as people get older, they become far more sensitive to energy. They're not just looking for excitement, they're looking for safety, clarity, consistency. So when someone tells you that you feel different, believe them. Don't dismiss it. Because often, what they're really saying is, I trust how I feel around you. And trust is the foundation of attraction. But many men have a habit of minimizing these moments. They laugh it off, they deflect, they act as though it doesn't matter. And in doing so, they unintentionally lower their own perceived value. Receiving a compliment with calm confidence, not arrogance, just presence, reinforces the very thing that created the attraction in the first place. You're not trying to impress. You're allowing yourself to be experienced. And when you reach that point, something interesting begins to happen in your interactions with other men as well, because the fourth sign is about how men respond to you. You'll notice that other men either become very respectful or subtly competitive, and this is one of the clearest mirrors of your perceived value in a social environment. Because men, often without realizing it, are constantly assessing hierarchy. They're observing confidence, composure, how others respond to you, and adjusting their behavior. So when a man sees someone who carries himself with certainty, he will either align with that energy or challenge it. You might notice respect, or someone trying just a little too hard to outshine you. Both are responses to the same thing, recognition. And here's where your stability matters. If you react emotionally, if you feel the need to prove yourself, you lower your position. But if you remain grounded, if you let others reveal themselves without needing to interrupt, people naturally see where the real confidence lies, because true confidence doesn't compete, it allows. It observes, it leads without forcing, and when you begin to understand these patterns, not intellectually, but experientially, you stop chasing validation. You start recognizing it, and that changes everything about how you move through the world. And as you begin to recognize that shift, something very subtle, yet incredibly powerful, starts to unfold in your interactions. You stop reacting to every situation, and you start observing it. You stop asking, how am I being perceived? And instead, you begin to notice, what is actually happening around me? And that awareness alone puts you in a completely different position. Because the fifth sign is something most men overlook entirely. Women begin to place themselves in your physical space. Now, this doesn't always look obvious. It's rarely dramatic. In fact, it's often quiet, almost unnoticeable if you're not paying attention. She might stand a little closer than necessary. She might choose the seat next to you when there are other options. She might join a conversation you're part of without a direct invitation. And if you're not aware, you'll dismiss it as coincidence. But it's not. Human beings are incredibly intentional with space, especially when it comes to attraction. We naturally move closer to what we feel drawn to, and we create distance from what we don't. This isn't something people consciously think about. It's instinctive. So when a woman places herself within your proximity, she is not just happening to be there, she is responding to something she feels in your presence. And more importantly, she is giving you an opening. Now here's where many men get it wrong. They hesitate, they question it, they wait for something more obvious, more direct, more certain. And in that hesitation, the moment passes, not because the interest disappeared, but because the opportunity wasn't met. You see, attraction often operates in these small windows, subtle signals, brief openings. And when those signals are not acknowledged, the energy fades, not dramatically, just quietly. So the question becomes, how do you respond? Not with pressure, not with forced conversation, but with awareness. If someone is consistently placing themselves near you, acknowledge their presence, a simple glance, a calm, natural comment, something that says, I see you here. That's all it takes to open the door. Because leadership and attraction isn't about control. It's about responsiveness. It's about recognizing when something is being offered and meeting it without overthinking. Now let's go deeper into perception, because the sixth sign is something that shapes how people treat you before they even know you. People begin to assume that you have options. And this is where social psychology becomes incredibly fascinating. You might hear comments like, you probably have a lot of women around you, or I'm sure you say that to everyone, or even subtle remarks from friends who hint at the same idea. And what's interesting is these assumptions are not based on evidence. They're based on behavior. When you carry yourself with calm confidence, when you're not chasing attention, when you're comfortable walking away from interactions that don't align with you, people interpret that as abundance. And abundance is attractive because it signals that your attention is valuable. Now think about the opposite for a moment. When someone is overly available, constantly seeking validation, always trying to keep conversations alive, what does that communicate? It communicates scarcity. It suggests that their attention is not in demand, and therefore it loses perceived value. This doesn't mean you play games. It doesn't mean you withdraw or act distant for the sake of strategy. It simply means you respect your own time and energy enough not to give it away without intention. There's a quiet confidence in knowing that you can walk away and be completely at peace with that decision. And when others sense that, they begin to value your presence more. I've seen this dynamic play out countless times. A man who doesn't speak the most, doesn't try the hardest, but carries himself with certainty, often becomes the center of attention without ever asking for it. Because people are drawn to what feels rare, an emotional independence. That ability to be present without needing anything in return is incredibly rare. Now, as this perception builds, something even more subtle begins to happen in your interactions. The seventh sign is that women begin to mirror your body language. Now this is something that happens almost entirely beneath conscious awareness. It's not planned, it's not deliberate, but it's one of the clearest indicators of connection and attraction. When someone feels comfortable with you, when they feel drawn to your energy, their body naturally begins to sync with yours. If you lean back, they lean back. If you slow down your movements, they match your pace. If you take a sip of your drink, moments later, they do the same. This is known in psychology as mirroring, and it's deeply connected to rapport and emotional alignment. But here's what's important to understand. Mirroring doesn't create attraction. It reflects it. It shows you that the other person is responding to your presence, not just physically, but emotionally. And once again, awareness is everything. Because if you're disconnected from yourself, if you're constantly adjusting, constantly seeking approval, constantly reacting, there's nothing stable for the other person to mirror. But when you are grounded, when your movements are calm, your energy is steady, your presence is consistent, it creates a rhythm, and others begin to fall into it. I remember watching a conversation once between two people who had just met. One of them was clearly more centered, slower in speech, relaxed in posture, completely at ease. And within minutes, the other person began to match that energy. Their voice softened, their movements slowed, their entire demeanor shifted. And it wasn't forced, it was felt. That's the power of internal stability. You don't have to control the interaction, you become the pace of it. And when you reach that level, attraction stops being something you chase and becomes something that naturally forms around you. But here's where I want to bring you back to something deeper. Because all of these signs we've talked about, the silence, the eye contact, the proximity, the perception, the mirroring, they all point to one central truth. Attraction is not logical. It's emotional, it's psychological, and most importantly, it's experiential. It's not about memorizing techniques or following steps. It's about understanding how your internal state shapes external reactions. And this is where many men get stuck. They look for clear, obvious signals. They want certainty. They want guarantees. They want something they can measure and control. But human connection doesn't work that way. It's fluid. It's subtle. It exists in moments, not formulas. So when you start recognizing these patterns, even just a few of them, don't rush to analyze them. Receive them. Allow yourself to accept that you are being seen differently. Because the moment you truly internalize that, your behavior changes without effort. You stop over-explaining. You stop seeking validation. You stop questioning every interaction. And instead, you begin to lead. Not in a loud, dominant way, but in a calm, grounded, self-assured way. And that kind of leadership is deeply attractive. Now, I want you to reflect for a moment. Think about your recent interactions. Think about the environments you've been in, the conversations you've had, the people you've encountered. Have you seen any of these signs? Even one or two? If you have, then what you're experiencing is not random. It's a reflection of how you are being perceived. And more importantly, it's a reflection of who you've become. But awareness alone is not enough. Because once you recognize your value, the next step is learning how to hold it, how to stop giving it away in moments of doubt, how to remain grounded when attention increases, how to trust your presence without needing constant confirmation. And that's where everything begins to deepen, not just in attraction, but in how you experience yourself. And this is where the conversation becomes even more important, because recognizing your value is one thing. But maintaining it, especially in real-world situations, is something entirely different. Because let me ask you something honestly. How many times have you felt confident in one moment, and then, in the very next interaction, you started second-guessing yourself? How many times have you noticed someone showing interest, but instead of leaning into it, you pulled back mentally and started analyzing every detail? That internal shift, that moment where certainty turns into doubt, that is where most men lose the advantage they already have. Not because they aren't attractive, but because they don't trust what they're experiencing. You see, the mind has a tendency to protect you from perceived risk, and attention, especially positive attention, can feel like pressure if you're not used to holding it. It can make you feel exposed. It can make you question whether you can live up to the perception others have of you. And so, instead of standing in that moment, you retreat. Sometimes subtly, sometimes completely. You talk more than necessary. You explain yourself. You try to make the interaction perfect. You look for reassurance in the other person's reactions. And in doing so, you shift the dynamic. Because the very thing that created attraction, your grounded presence, becomes diluted. I once spoke to a man who described this perfectly. He said, "I can feel when someone is interested in me, but the moment I feel it, I get in my own head and ruin it." And that's not uncommon. In fact, it's incredibly human. But here's what I told him, and what I want you to understand deeply. You don't ruin attraction by being imperfect. You ruin it by abandoning your center. Attraction is not about performing flawlessly. It's about being consistent in who you are, even when attention increases. So when someone looks at you, stay present. When someone moves closer to you, stay grounded. When someone engages with you, respond naturally, not strategically. Because the moment you shift into performance, you disconnect from the very energy that drew them in. And this becomes even more important as interactions deepen. Because attraction is not a single moment. It's a progression. It builds through consistency, through emotional safety, through subtle reinforcement of the same qualities that sparked it in the beginning. And this is where many men unknowingly sabotage themselves. They think they need to do more. More talking, more impressing, more proving. But the truth is, you often need to do less. Less overthinking, less reacting, less chasing, more presence, more awareness, more trust in your own rhythm. Let me give you a very real example. Imagine you're sitting across from someone. Maybe it's a casual conversation. Maybe it's a date. Maybe it's just a shared moment in a public space. There's a natural flow. There's eye contact. There's ease. Now suddenly, you become aware of the moment. You think, this is going well. And instantly, something changes. You start monitoring yourself. You start choosing your words more carefully. You start wondering how you're being perceived. And without realizing it, you step out of the moment. The connection weakens. Not because the other person lost interest, but because you disconnected from the experience. Now imagine the opposite. The same moment, the same awareness, but instead of analyzing it, you stay in it. You continue listening. You respond naturally. You allow pauses. You maintain eye contact without pressure. You don't rush to fill silence. That is what deepens attraction. It's not intensity. It's consistency of presence. And when you begin to operate from that place, something very interesting happens. You become emotionally stable in interactions. You're not easily thrown off. You're not overly affected by small changes in behavior. You don't panic if someone takes a little longer to respond, or if the energy shifts slightly, because your sense of self is not dependent on the moment. And that stability is incredibly attractive. Now, let's talk about something that often goes unspoken, but plays a huge role in how others perceive you: your relationship with attention. Because once you begin to notice these signs, once you start recognizing that people are responding to you differently, attention increases. And attention can be addictive if you're not careful. It can pull you into a cycle where you begin to seek it, instead of simply allowing it. You might find yourself enjoying the validation a little too much. You might start looking for reactions. You might subtly adjust your behavior to maintain that attention. And this is where you have to be very honest with yourself. Because the moment you begin to chase attention, you lose the very quality that made you attractive. Detachment, not indifference, but detachment. The ability to appreciate attention without needing it, to receive interest without becoming dependent on it, to engage without losing your center. This is a level of emotional maturity that takes time to develop, but once you reach it, your entire presence changes. People can feel it. They feel that you're not trying to take anything from them. You're simply there, fully present, fully grounded. And that creates a sense of ease that is very rare. Now I want you to think about your own experiences again. Have there been moments where you felt completely at ease, not trying to impress, not trying to prove anything, just being yourself? And how did people respond to you in those moments? If you're honest, those were probably the moments where interactions felt the most natural, the most engaging, the most effortless. That's not a coincidence. That's alignment. That's what happens when your internal state matches your external behavior, and that's where attraction thrives. But here's the final piece that ties everything together. Leadership. Not in the traditional sense, not dominance, not control, but emotional leadership. The ability to guide the interaction without forcing it. To create a sense of direction without pressure, to hold space without needing to fill it. Because when you begin to trust your presence, when you stop questioning your value, when you remain grounded even as attention increases, people naturally begin to follow your lead. Not because you demand it, but because it feels right, it feels safe, it feels certain. And certainty, especially in a world where so many people are unsure of themselves, is incredibly attractive. So as you move forward from here, I don't want you to focus on trying to become someone else. I want you to recognize what is already there, to notice the signs, to trust them, to stop dismissing your own experiences. Because the reality is, many of you watching this are far more attractive, far more impactful, far more influential than you allow yourselves to believe. And once you truly accept that, everything changes. Not overnight, but consistently. In the way you walk into a room, in the way you hold eye contact, in the way you respond to others, in the way you experience yourself. And that shift is what transforms attraction from something you chase into something you naturally embody. And when that happens, you're no longer fighting for attention. You're deciding what deserves yours. And that is real power. And when you truly arrive at that place, where you are no longer chasing attention, no longer questioning every signal, no longer shrinking yourself in moments that were meant for you, something very quiet, yet very powerful settles within you. You begin to trust yourself, not in a loud declarative way, but in a steady, grounded way that doesn't need constant reinforcement. You stop asking, "Am I enough for this moment?" And instead, you move with the understanding that your presence is already contributing something meaningful. And from that place, your entire experience of attraction changes. Because attraction is no longer something external that you're trying to win. It becomes something internal that you carry. And when you carry it, people respond, not always in obvious ways, not always in dramatic ways, but consistently, subtly, and often more deeply than you expect. Now, I want to bring you into a very real scenario. Something that might feel familiar. Imagine you're in a social setting. Maybe it's a small gathering, maybe it's a quiet evening out. There's conversation around you, movement, energy, and at some point, you notice someone observing you, not intensely, not in a way that demands attention, but just enough for you to feel it. Now, in the past, you might have ignored it, or questioned it, or told yourself it didn't mean anything, but now, you pause. You don't react immediately. You don't perform. You simply allow the moment to exist. And in that small shift, something changes. Because instead of breaking the moment with doubt, you let it breathe. You acknowledge it, not necessarily with words, but with presence. A brief glance, a calm expression, a sense that you are aware and comfortable with that awareness, and that's it. No overthinking, no pressure. No need to force anything further. That's what it looks like to hold your value. It's not about turning every interaction into something more. It's about not diminishing the interaction that's already happening. And this is where your power becomes very refined. Because you begin to understand that not every signal needs to be acted on immediately, but every signal can be recognized. And recognition changes how you show up. Now let's take this even deeper, into something that many people feel, but rarely articulate. Emotional safety. When someone feels drawn to you, when they hold eye contact, when they mirror you, when they move closer, when they respond to your presence, what they are often responding to is not just attraction. It's how safe they feel in your energy. And safety in this context doesn't mean softness or passivity. It means stability. It means they don't feel like they have to perform around you. They don't feel judged. They don't feel like they're walking into unpredictability. They feel at ease, and that kind of emotional experience is incredibly rare, especially in a world where so many interactions are rushed, distracted, or driven by surface-level impressions. So when you develop that grounded presence, when you learn to hold silence, maintain eye contact, move with intention, and stay centered even when attention increases, you create an environment where people can relax into themselves, and that is where deeper attraction begins. Because people are not just drawn to how you look, they are drawn to how they feel when they're around you. And if they feel more like themselves, more at ease, more present, they will want to stay in that space longer. Now, let me ask you something that requires honesty. Have you ever left an interaction, and instead of feeling energized, you felt drained? Not because the other person was difficult, but because you were trying too hard, trying to say the right thing, trying to be perceived a certain way, trying to manage the moment instead of experiencing it. That kind of effort, over time, disconnects you from yourself, and when you're disconnected from yourself, others feel it, even if they can't explain it. But when you remove that effort, when you allow yourself to simply be present, to respond naturally, to trust your instincts instead of overriding them, interactions become lighter, more fluid, more real. And that authenticity is deeply attractive because it's rare. Now, I want to give you something practical, something you can actually begin to apply immediately. The next time you enter a room, don't rush. Pause for just a moment. Take in the environment. Notice where you are, who is around you, how the space feels. And then move with intention. Not slowly in a forced way, not dramatically, just consciously. That small shift changes how you experience the space and how the space experiences you. The next time you make eye contact with someone, don't immediately look away. Hold it for a brief moment longer than you normally would. Not to challenge, not to impress, but to acknowledge, and then return to what you were doing, without overthinking it. The next time someone compliments you, instead of deflecting, simply receive it. A calm thank you with eye contact is more powerful than any attempt to downplay it. And the next time you feel attention, don't chase it, and don't run from it. Allow it. Let it exist without needing to control it. Because the more comfortable you become with being seen, the less you will feel the need to prove anything. And that is where true confidence lives. Now, as we come to the end of this conversation, I want you to understand something very clearly. If you've recognized even a few of these signs in your life, even in small moments, then you are not starting from zero. You are not lacking. You are not behind. You are simply not fully aware yet. And awareness, once it's developed, changes everything. It changes how you interpret situations. It changes how you respond. It changes how you carry yourself, even in silence. So instead of asking, how do I become more attractive? Start asking, where am I already being seen? And how can I stop ignoring it? Because the answers are already showing up in your life. In the way people look at you, in the way they speak to you, in the way they position themselves around you, in the way they respond to your presence, even when you're doing nothing at all. And once you begin to trust those signals, once you stop dismissing them, once you allow yourself to fully step into that awareness, you stop chasing validation and you start choosing your experiences. So if something in this conversation resonated with you, if you saw yourself in even a few of these moments, I want you to take that seriously. Don't brush it off. Don't minimize it. Because this is not about becoming someone new. It's about recognizing who you already are and learning how to stand in that consistently. And if you found value in this, if this gave you a new perspective, then take a moment to support the channel. A simple like or sharing this with someone who needs to hear it helps this message reach the people who are still questioning themselves in ways they don't need to. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Mindful Senior Living, because these conversations are not about quick fixes. They're about deep, lasting shifts in how you see yourself and how you move through the world. Take a moment after this ends, reflect on your recent experiences, and start noticing what you may have been overlooking, because the signs have been there all along. You just needed to see them differently. And once you do, you don't go back.